Tēnā koutou katoa. Um, this is for um, 8005.4 or 8002.4, the transformational practice. And I've decided to do it through the medium of the recording. This is my second recording for this particular element of this paper. Taking into consideration feedback and everything that was given, I'm looking forward to having this recording and sending it back through. So I'm gonna start after looking at the feedback that I'm gonna start at my the whole transformation of my practice. I'm gonna start at the classroom strategies. This was a PLD that I engaged in, and I learned a number of strategies that could be used in the classroom. And there was a number of strategies that we had to choose from. We had to choose from particular strategies and try them out. So for me, I chose to do tuakana taina, individual, group work, and collaboration. Um, and it did enhance my practice. As I only had limited understanding, I suppose that was the challenge of what strategies could be used um, um, by myself for my learners. It gave me a wider scope of tools as well to be using in the practice, which is interesting because that's what it was all about. And it really got me thinking about the engagement with certain learners and adjusting those strategies when needed. I didn't really know what to expect. However, before we got to use these particular strategies, there was there was just a brief for each particular strategy to give you a little bit of an understanding about where you should be taking that strategy or how you should be using it. So that was interesting. That gave me a lot of help because it gave me numbers understanding as well. That it was like a trial and error as well, but it just to see if things were working, obviously, and to improve over the year too with my practice and how those things were particularly going to work. And it made a huge it made a huge point of difference as a new practitioner because of the fact that hey, I was always developing it all the time. Um, and with my learners, yes, it did make a difference for them as well, which was interesting. And I'm sort of going back on and what I sort of had learnt, and I came back to about three spaces, sorry, 3 points of information through the literature, and I'll sort of start with the Tātai Ako summary of Ako and how that explains about that engagement with your learners. I suppose this is a holistic point of view, obviously, and the same again with the Tapasa um, through participation and engagement through well, I'll use the word Pacifica lens, but see these are yeah. So these are I think these are the ones. This is this is all the stuff that really enhanced it. I think I had to find the understanding of what it was asking for as well, and that was the challenge for me. But when we did those particular papers, I picked up on the learner agency, and I thought to myself, hey, that's a really good thing too because there's an input and an output, and for the learner agency, hey, it gave them more of an opportunity, individual and as a collective learner agency, more opportunities to develop key competencies. So I think that was the literature that really backed it up for me. And another one was talking about the Vygotsky and Burnham model of the ZPD, which is the zone of proximal, and that gave me the opportunity to look at that end piece around peers, small group, and self. So that development about them taking on that themselves. So that was my first part of it, when in reflection, looking at what I'd actually sort of achieved through that particular time for my practice. The So that was one of the PLDs that I was involved in. The second PLD that I want to bring into and it'll all go into my pātaka oko. It obviously is all the different types that we did a PLD session, all different types about leadership, and this really enhanced it. I think it was a very good engagement. Yeah, the changes to my own practice was sort of about. I found it to be a lot more personal, but at the same time, give me an understanding of what that really looked like for me, and how could I improve as a practitioner as well. And I think um, the initial challenge was coming out of my state of mind about how leadership really looked. Because when people ask me what kind of leadership skills that I had, I'd probably tend to sort of give them a snapshot, but not be really precise about it. So, what was good about it as well, and about what did I expect, and the outcome was we actually had senior management members of our senior leadership team make those comments for every one of us around how they, without us knowing, how they saw our particular leadership styles and what we were bringing into that leadership space. So, I thought it was really, that was from their perspective as well. So I thought that was really important that, you could see it from another point of view. So once again, that was helping my particular growth. I thought to myself, well, I didn't see it like that. They gave us like 24 different leadership qualities to sort of have a look at, and then you would pick the five, about sort of thinking about how you saw yourself as a leader. So, coming through that, they actually picked for me wisdom, gratitude, kindness, modesty, and love. That was my five. When I chose my five, I didn't see it like that at all. So that helped me evolve as well, I think, and that's come into and now as a practitioner, where I've got that now. I've got that understanding about what they saw, and how I saw myself to be as well. So I think it was of great value. The challenge at times, I think, around leadership and around that whole kind of thing is sort of whether you're willing to take that information on, and really have I suppose being open to that. A lot of people can sort of shut down on it as well, but there's a flip side to that, meaning a lot of people, especially, I can only come from a Maori lens, is a lot of people don't like talking about their leadership qualities in that space, and that was something that we talked about as well. Obviously, around the kumara doesn't speak of its sweetness, but at the same time, I thought, wow, there was some for me, and that was coming through our module of leadership. In the beginning, I definitely chose the servant leadership model for myself, and the collaborative. So the servant talks about being a servant first, and giving back, and that's from Greenleaf, and um, you know as conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. It's void of ego and agenda, and that individual sort of obviously put themselves out. Hey, if it's all right for my sort of my your people or whatever, to do the job, then it's all right for me. I'll go and do it first, and that's the whole thing around the servant leadership. What I found as well is the collaborative relationship from Hank. as well suggests that collaborative leadership is based on relationships that you'd form, and a successful leader must be an equal contributor to the success of the relationship formed on the common goal of school improvement. And they're using the schools as that, and thinking that as well, that sort of came back to the whole kotaitanga thing as well about having that engagement. I felt as well, and it's important, and if I don't get to my last one, but I felt as well that the what I felt with myself around the Indigenous leadership as well, that there was going to be an important part, and that came via Matua Huturoa Ku Barclay Ku, sort of talking about his time navigating waka and things like that, and that's how this journey's been anyway for a lot of us, and especially for me, and navigating that waka, and this is from an Indigenous point of view as well, thinking like from an indigenous point of view, the whole philosophy or the whole kaupapa behind Indigenous leadership is making sure that you've passed that knowledge on to other individuals, but for them to do better than you. There was something that there's some really gold. There was some real gold in that as well. I thought that that was a really good point that he made, and that's called wayfinding. Wayfinding requires that we become explorers of our world, and we set sail behind the compass of our existing knowledge to transverse uncharted waters in ourselves and in the world. And in the world, and I thought that had real value about that, and how that really looked for me as my practices of as my practice is evolving. That keeps me grounded in a humble place as well. Probably the last one, just before finishing off, and I know my time's running out. Was my last TMC with my goals, and my goals were to develop a strong understanding of online learning, to be able to identify asking for help, collectively involved in the PLD sessions, and understanding a bit more around teaching pedagogies. I think for me here, the challenge is for me to reset. Sometimes I felt like I might have jumped the gun on some of them, and then sort of in reflection now, thinking there was probably two that I would be willing to change to talk about as well, especially with my in school mentor and things like that, and sort of made me realize that, well, hey, maybe that wasn't as important as I thought it was. So it's about that as well, and being I suppose to be honest, and yeah, it gave me a sense, that as well. It gave me a sense of confidence as well, meaning that with particular goals, hey, I was feeling a lot more at ease with those particular goals, and I think that was the space that I started to come into, which I was happy with. But I mean, there's always room for improvement. And what I did find with the literature, before winding up, is like sort of the likes of reflection is paramount, and I'm sort of taking that back to Dewey, and about critical reflection on ourselves as teachers as well, and which is important, obviously, and it has to be like that because we're always evolving, and we've got to be able to sort of ask the hard questions around that when you are reflecting about how things are really going. I picked up on here Anni, the here Anna Huritau as well, about the five different phases that we learnt in our summer intensives, about taking those different phases around your own personal reflection, because this is more about me than my learners. And the last one I was thinking about it and looked at again was the Gibbs structure debriefing as well, making sure that you knew that you could debrief and have those conversations when needed. Yeah, so kia ora mai tātou katoa.